Hello and welcome to this instalment of Keeping Going, the virtual program being offered by the Home Place. I'd like to say thanks a million to the Home Place for asking me to be involved in this series. It's great in these weird days of isolation to have a project to be getting your teeth into, and it's been a lot of fun thinking about putting this together. It's a strange time to be a musician, somebody who normally lives in a world where you're out and about all the time meeting people and playing gigs, to be stuck at home all the time. But we've been very, very grateful to have the garden to retreat to and to kind of feed our souls. So it's been wonderful, and we've been reading far too much and eating too much, like I'm sure everybody else. But anyway, I wanted to share a couple of songs and possibly read a couple of poems in keeping with the Home Place tradition. So the first thing I wanted to do was read a poem by Seamus Heaney. I went to Coleraine Inst, and my first real exposure to Seamus Heaney was at A level. We had a terrific teacher called Jim Knight. I'll never forget him, and he really kind of made these poems start to open up for me. I began to really examine Seamus Heaney's work, and I got an awful lot out of it, and that kind of started a long-term love for the man's work. And I wanted to read this particular poem called Markings. We studied the selected poems, which was the Faber edition that had the famous duffel coat on the cover, Seamus wearing the duffel coat, which is now in the glass case at Home Place. My knees started to knock when I walked into the Home Place and saw that duffel coat after all those years. Anyway, Seamus Heaney, Markings. This reminds me of football matches that I used to play in Harper's Hill in Coleraine when I was a kid, especially during the summer months. We marked the pitch, 4 jackets for 4 goalposts, that was all. The corners and the squares were there like longitude and latitude under the bumpy ground, to be agreed about or disagreed about when the time came. And then we picked the teams and crossed the line our called names drew between us. Youngsters shouting their heads off in a field as the light died, and they kept on playing because by then they were playing in their heads, and the actual kicked ball came to them like a dream heaviness, and their own hard breathing in the dark and skids on grass sounded like effort in another world. It was quick and constant, a game that never need be played out. Some limit had been passed. There was fleetness, furtherance, untiredness in time that was extra, unforeseen and free. 2. You also loved lines pegged out in the garden, the spade nicking the first straight edge along the tight white string. Or strings stretched perfectly to make the outline of a house foundation, pale timber battens set at right angles for every corner, each freshly sawn new board, spick and span in the oddly passive grass. Or the imaginary line straight down a field of grazing, to be ploughed open from the rod stuck in one headrig to the rod stuck in the other. All these things entered you, as if they were both the door and what came through it. They marked the spot, marked time, and held it open. A mower parted the bronze sea of corn. A windlass hauled the centre out of water. 2 men with a cross cut kept it swimming into a felled beach, backwards and forwards, so that they seemed to row the steady earth. And time now for a song. I'm going to play The Road to 5 Mile Town. She was the youngest of 4 daughters, and she married way too fast. In the days when vows were iron and you had to make them last. But her father was a bruiser, and he bruised him twice a week. She couldn't live the life her mother had and turn the other cheek. So when she turned 16, she started counting off the days till she could find herself a husband and finally get away. He was a farmer with big farmer's hands, and she met him at a dance. She set her sights upon him, and he never stood a chance. She thought the price of being choosy was to live upon the shelf, and she thought he'd do the job as well as anybody else. And when they both stood at the altar, he said he'd never let her down. He had a farm and 40 acres either side of the road to 5 Mile Town. The first year the river burst its banks and half the countryside was drowned. All the food that he had planted lay and rotted in the ground, and he'd come home at night exhausted and lie dead between the sheets. And she'd lie all night and listen to the roaring of the beasts. And it was dark as being lost and never found. You wouldn't even know your eyes were closed or open on the road to 5 Mile Town. Once upon a time she thought the world would be hers to wrap her arms around. Now she makes the beds and lays back down. She drew a disappearing heart when there was no one else around, on a steamed up kitchen window looking out on the road to 5 Mile Town. The second poem that I'd like to read is a poem by Sean O'Brien called 3 Lighthouses. I first, I think, discovered Sean O'Brien in The Guardian. I think The Guardian had published one of his poems, and I then went on and started to explore his work, and I've been a big fan ever since. This is from, I think, probably what you could call a breakthrough book from Sean O'Brien, The Drowned Book, which I would highly recommend. It's published by Picador. So this is called 3 Lighthouses. When their history is over, the Rivermouth offers these lighthouses sheltered employment. Watch, reflect, and let the square white towers take the light laid on at dusk and dawn by Scottish colourists. White that is blue, that is nothing at all, that is water and air. And that says, although never in so many words, that the world we have lived in is real and therefore does not lie beyond the dream of touching, but places its light in our hands. This evening the ferry will carry us home with the workers off shift, an old couple, a mother and child. And whatever our dead friends would say if they stood in the bow alongside us, remember, to take in the sight coming back on the gathering waters that slide to the mouth of the Tyne, where the world is beginning and ending. 3 lighthouses wearing the weather, in each of them a table laid with rosemary and rue, so that the dead may sit at peace and watch with us tonight. That's 3 Lighthouses by Sean O'Brien. And I'm going to finish off with another piece of music. I've just put out an album called Ghost Notes, an album of cover versions of songs that have been kind of in my back pocket for years, things that I grew up listening to. And one of them was a lovely old song that was recorded by Jim Reeves. I think a lot of other people have recorded it too, but I always had a soft spot for this one, so I'm going to say thanks a million to The Home Place for asking me to do this. It's been a lot of fun. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'm going to finish off with Scarlet Ribbons. I peeked in to say goodnight, and then I heard my child in prayer, and for me some scarlet ribbons for my hair. All the stores were locked and shuttered, all the streets were dark and bare. In our town, no scarlet ribbons for her hair. Through the night, my heart was aching. Just before the dawn was breaking, I peeked in, and on her pillow in gay profusion lying there, scarlet ribbons for her hair. If I live